Okay, I'm going to show you how to clean your ceramics using the faucet. And you only want to do this if you are cleaning your work at least 24 hours ahead of time. Okay. So the water, let's stick it underneath. Okay. Now, this isn't enough. You actually need to kind of scrub it. So get a nail scrubber or a toothbrush that isn't gross like the one we have here, which we use to scrub into like greasy stuff. Don't use that. A baby bottle scrubber is good, but I wouldn't really use the one that you use for actual baby bottles in your house. Or like, again, we have this disgusting thing that we use to scrub greasy pans. Do not let that touch your ceramics because it will impact your glazing. The glaze won't stick, basically. Okay, so I need more water. Well, not more water, I just need to run it, and then I need to scrub it just to get into all the grooves. This is a little nail brush I have. I'm going to clean the back too. If I don't have a brush, I can use a sponge that's included in my kit. Make sure there's no glaze or anything in it. And you just run it over the surface. I mean, really a toothbrush and nail brush is the best because then you can get into all the grooves. But now this is so filled up with water that glaze is not going to stick to it. And I have to wait at least 24 hours. Now, if I had not done that and I wanted to glaze right away, okay, this never had been cleaned, and I have to glaze today. I have to glaze right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sponge and just wipe over the surface and do my best to clean it up. Again, this is as if I never cleaned it. And then I'm looking around for a brush. Well, I'll have to show you that in a second. All right, I'm going to show you how to clean one that clean your ceramic work that you want to work on right away. It is best to clean it underneath the sink with a scrub brush, right? But if you can't, then the alternative is to get your sponge, make sure it's clean, and then you just wipe the surface. You do not want to soak this down with water. That's what makes it so that you can't work on it immediately. But a little bit of water, of course, is okay because it just evaporates so fast. Both sides, front and back, and on the sides, so you don't transfer that dust when you handle it. And I just know that I have little bits of clay, dust, and chunkies all in here, right? I know that's happening. So how do I deal with that since my sponge really can't get in there? Well, I'm going to use my brush. And if you have a nail brush, that is the best thing for sure. But if you don't, you can just use the brush that I gave you guys. Oh, look. Oh, you probably can't see it, but there's still glaze in this. So I should have used some soap and some water to clean it out. So let me take care of that real quick because I don't want to apply glaze. I'm trying to clean it. All right, so now I'm going to take my brush, which has some water in it, just a little bit, and I'm just going to go over all the little grooves, all the little lines, anything that could be holding little chunks of clay or clay dust. And just to try to sweep it out of there. Is this good for my brush? Not really. If you have a kind of a junk brush at home, that would probably be best than using our regular glazing brushes. But, you know, we use what we got. Okay. All right. Now, if it still feels dusty, then you need to wipe it again. Like, okay, you just don't want any of that dust to get in the way of your glazing. All right, now she's ready. Okay. I'm going to show you some ways. What am I trying to say? Well, I have a list of things that I need to cover. And the first one, after cleaning your clay, is how to make sure your glazes are not dried out or fine. Like, look, checking the consistency of your glazes, because if I haven't opened this up yet and it has been sitting in a warm spot, chances are some of the water is evaporated out of it. Okay? So what I do is I take my brush and I am going to stir it around. You got to stir it anyway, so kind of takes care of that. And then I want to see how it flows off the end of my brush. You can use a popsicle stick too, but look, if you look at it, it's kind of cool how bright blue it is. Okay, so that's kind of perfect, but imagine it's not. Imagine it's not even really coming off the brush at all. What I'm going to do is grab some water. If you are using a cup from the kitchen, then you want to make sure that you just use it for now on, just for glazing, and don't, like, we really try to keep glaze and ceramic stuff that has glaze on it out of the kitchen. It's not really great for consuming. You know, so this is a cup that we don't really use in my house, so I just keep it in my office. So I'm going to take some water. You couldn't even see that. Dip my hand in there, just a couple of drops. And I'm going to stir it around and see if that helps. Sometimes you might open these up and it looks like cracked, like desert floor, because it's so dried out. You still have to do it the same way. You add a little bit of water and then you just stir it around. Okay. If I keep adding water, it's going to be too much. Like, I'm already kind of right there where it might be too much water. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like. I mean, it's just really flowing off the end of my brush. I do not want to add any more water than this. Okay. So I'm just turning my brush around in my little cup. And then I'm going to use my sponge to just wipe off the end of my brush. Okay, because otherwise I'm going to get it all over my hands. All right, so let's put it down here so you can see this. Is that out of the way? Okay. All right, now that I'm ready, I want to I want to move all this stuff out of the way, because you guys have to make sure you have a glaze plan. And I went over this in class, but a glaze plan, grab a piece of paper. Woo! Probably gonna be upside down for you guys, but I think you can handle that. Grab something so you can see what I'm writing. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna turn it. So a glaze plan, you can do this in your sketchbook or on a separate piece of paper, but don't lose the paper. You will be taking a picture of this and putting it into your Padlet. And you need a glaze plan for every medallion. Really every project we do. Okay, so I'm going to draw my medallion out. Just making sure I have everything. I don't know which way's up. If this is up or this is up. I guess I should make a decision. Oh, it looks like the eyelashes up here. So I'm going to put the dots down here. My glaze plan is just a way for me to keep track of what colors I'm using. So currently I have blue, yellow, and white. Okay. So I want my darkest color, because that's how I am. I want my darkest color in the background. So I'm going to write blue and back, actually in lines and recesses. Recesses are anything that pushes back. So any of these things that push back. To me, this is just a really easy way to glaze. And then I'm going to put white inside the eye. And because I have yellow and blue, I can actually mix colors. So I'm going to make actually like a light blue green. I'm going to mix all three colors together. Green. And then inside the eye, what should I do? What should I do? Yellow is going to look super weird. I'll try it. You don't know until you try, right? Okay. All right, so this is my plan. Now, my glazes are also labeled with these codes on it. Let's see. Now, because I have to do all this and get 600 glazes ready, I did not put like yellow, blue, or anything. That was just too much writing for me. Plus, in the classroom, we actually have like 4 different types of blue. So what I did is I wrote the code. And so my yellow is actually SC6. SC6. I'm putting this here just because this is what we would normally do. And I found a Sharpie at home and I wrote yellow on the cup because once I take the lid on, like anything could be SC6, but I know what yellow is. So there's that. Same thing with my blue. I did the same thing with my blue. Here's the lid to the blue. We're just using these, so that's why they don't have the lids on, right? Okay, well, I need this one anyway. So I would make a glaze plan for every single one of my medallions. But I at least need to have a glaze plan for the whatever it is I'm glazing. Right. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to do the inlay technique. This is called glaze inlay. You will be writing down that definition at some point. So probably today. But glaze inlay is a little trick that we use. I use this probably on everything I do with clay. But it's an easy way to get glaze in all these little grooves, every one of these things, without having to find the perfect brush. I'm gonna grab a brush. You guys don't have liner brushes, but in your kit, but if you have one at home, these are really great for glazing little tiny details, but except mine's a little wonky right now. But if I have to get like blue lines in there, I would need the thinnest brush ever to get it in there. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to just be quick. And so I'm going to use the glaze inlay technique, but it only works if you do this first. Like I haven't put any glaze on here yet. So this is the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to take my glaze and stir it around again. My brush is already wet because I was using it to clean off my ceramic. Okay, so stir it up, and this is going to, well, probably blow your mind because it's going to look like I'm making a huge mess, and then it's going to look amazing. All right, normally I do this with like a dark brown. I should say that. Don't use your underglaze. Do not use this little cup of dark brown to do this. Please don't do it. This is for something else. Just leave this in your bag and ignore it. But I would use a black really, but I have run out of black from my demos. So I'm going with blue. This is going to look pretty cool anyway. All right, so I'm going to take the glaze and really just make sure it goes into those grooves. Anywhere that pushes back that I want blue to be, or whatever color. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be black. It doesn't have to be blue. It can be dark green. It can be red. It can even be a light color if you want to. It's just sometimes those are harder to see later. So I'm going to put actually blue all over. I'm not going to put it here because I don't need it there. That's just going to waste glaze, but I really want it to be anywhere where I have any kind of push back surface. I have all these little dots. I'm going to put them in there, and you got to really make sure that the glaze gets in there. Now this is very different than the video that we saw on how to use stroke and coat glazes. The video we saw said be very careful with your brush strokes, and that is normally the case, but for this technique, you want to make sure you get glaze into those grooves, and that may require you to jam your brush into those grooves. So I have little dots all the way around the side. I'm going to do the same thing on the sides. Yeah. If you don't get glaze into these little dots, then what will happen, I mean, because you can see I have these dots. What will happen is there will be raw ceramic material showing through. The glaze will not magically just move in there. You have to put it into the spot that you want it. And that's actually one of the great things about these glazes is they don't move around very much. Some glazes just ooze and bleed and do all these effects, which can be really cool, but also it's nice to have more control. Okay, so that's pretty good. You can see it's starting to dry because look, the sheen, this was mentioned in that video, the sheen is going away. It's starting to dry out. I can even rush this with a hair dryer if I wanted to. All right, so I can wait for this to dry and then do another coat if I feel like I didn't get very much glaze into these holes. You can see the little dots. And so, I mean, it's already starting to dry in some areas, so I can add a little bit more if I want to. I'm not saying you have to be careful with the glaze because I did give you plenty. It may not seem like I did, but I did. However, there's no reason the glaze, like any of these, put extra glaze in any of these that are shallow. Like it's not going to work. You're going to see why in a second. Just looking to see which ones are dry. Okay. Now I'm going to let this dry for a second. Just put it down here. I got glaze on my hands, so I'm going to put my brush into my cup. You can use your bucket too. In fact, I would use my bucket except to clean my brushes and to do the next step, except my bucket is still got clay stuff in it. All right. Oh yeah, this is what I want to do. On my glaze plan, I want to write what I just did. So I want to say 1 to 2 layers. Done. Okay. And it's just good to keep track of how many layers you did so that your glaze turns out nice and even, because here's a good example. These are stroke and coat glazes, student work. So these were done by obviously the same student. They're the same color, at least they're supposed to be, but this one is sloppy and you can see there's only 1 layer of glaze in some areas and then 3 layers of glaze in some areas. And this is closer to 2 to 3 layers of glaze. That red is really nice and bright. That black is really bright. And you know, the corners are a little more solid. So this person probably just started not paying attention to their work at the end. So you really want to make sure you write down what you did for the day. So when you come back the next week to glaze, you'll know how many layers you used. Otherwise, you could end up with something sloppy like this. Okay. All right. So now that it's mostly dry, ooh, see, it's already on my hands again. Ugh. Okay, now that it's mostly dry, I am going to take my sponge. I'm going to dip it in the water. And then I am going to wipe the surface. And this is where the magic happens. Yeah. You're going to be like, ah, it just looks messy. What are you doing? But when you wipe the surface, I know it still looks kind of blue, but look, the glaze is still in all the little grooves. It works. All right, but you will always have a blue haze on underneath the colors that you put on top of that. Okay, but it's going to look a lot cooler when I start. So see, this is what it looks like so far when I start wiping the top here. I can decide when I'm done doing this too. I can be very thorough and just really try to get it the surface as clean as possible. So that the blue shows up in all the grooves, creates contrast. I keep moving my sponge around too so I can find a clean spot. This is also going to be another reason why you'd want to use a bucket, because now my sponge is so dirty, I have to clean it. a little scary. I don't want to get water all over my table here or on my computer. Just trying to get all this. So like I said, this is not good to be really using a cup you use in the kitchen. See, I spilled some on there. And I'm gonna start cleaning some more. Look, it's becoming kind of cool. Now this is a medium blue. So if I decide to go over with another color, that blue is going to come through a little bit. Especially if I use like yellow on top or white. If I go over with white, it's probably going to show up as like a white blue. They kind of blend together through the layers. Ooh, look at that, see? And no glaze on the back. If you end up with glaze on the back, I mean, there's a little bit of a stain. That's okay. The stain's all right. But any drips, any big blobs of glaze has to be wiped off. I will take off points for that. Okay, look at that. That's pretty cool, huh? I'll show you some other ones that I did too. So these are the ones from the demos in the class. Make sure my hands are cleanish. Yeah, I think it's this way actually. Nope, let's see, still can't figure it out. Is that one? Yeah, the eye is just a really good one for me to, this one needs to be wiped down a little more, but so you can see all the grooves. Oh, one more. Oh yeah, here, this one's really neat. Look at that, yeah. Okay, so that's how you do that. That's glaze inlay technique. Okay, all right, so normally I would let this dry, but I want to continue. I'm going to grab my white, which is over here. And now, ooh, look at this. Yay. I have actually 2 cups of water because I knew this was going to happen. I got a clean container right here. I don't need my sponge right now, so I'm just going to put it aside. And but I do need a clean brush, because if I take my brush and put it right into that white, I'm just going to muck up my white. Okay. All right. If I had some soap, I would put some soap in my hand. I would stir around the brush and then do that. All right. Okay. So I need to start glazing like that person said in the video. Let me make sure my glaze is not dried out. You have to stir it up anyway. Oh, that's perfect. That is perfect. It's pretty amazing how messy this can get pretty quickly. Okay. All right. So according to my glaze plan, I'm going to put white inside the eye. Now, I'm looking at my brush right now. That's a really small area. So I'm going to go into my bag and grab a smaller brush. So I don't know what you guys got, because I got a weird selection of brushes. So some of them are really fat. Some of them are medium size. I think everyone got a medium size one. And then some are really skinny. So you got 2 brushes. So I don't know if it was this or if you got a variation of this, right? So I'm going to take my medium brush because I think I can do this kind of neatly. I've never used it, so I want to dip it in the water and just kind of get rid, like there's a gel coating on top of there, a gelatin coating. So I want to get rid of that. Okay. Sometimes I try to paint myself to get the water off. And now I'm going to take my glaze, and I can work directly in the cup, or I can get a paper plate, or what's even better is a porcelain plate. I have these little cups at home, so I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a little glaze in here. If you work at a restaurant and you can get a hold of some of these salsa cups, I suggest them. They are the easiest things to work with, and then you can save your glaze for next class or next time you glaze. All right, so now I'm going to go over some of that blue, but my focus is really just to make the eye white again. And the blue is going to show up through the glaze when it's fired. Okay. I want to avoid the inside of the eye because I do not want a white center. That would look super creepy in my mind. Now it's getting kind of hard to, like, I can go here, but my brush is pretty big for that. I'm gonna try it. A little trick is take your brush and then pull off one side of the glaze. And this is, I don't know if you know this, but this brush has two sides. You can have it flat like this, so you can get a wide stroke, or you can turn it sideways and get a thin stroke. So I'm gonna turn it sideways to get a thin stroke. And I'm gonna have it go right here. Now this is just the first layer. I have to do this 3 times in order to get this to be the way I want it to be. Okay. So I'm gonna let that dry. And while that's drying, I can work on the outside, right? So, or I can work on a different medallion. I can pull out my other medallion and start working on that. But every time I add a layer of glaze, I need to put it on my glaze plan. All right, so I'm going to show you one more thing and then I will end this video. But yeah, so I want the outside to be light blue green. So I'm going to make that. And when you're mixing colors, you are going to start with your lightest color first. If you don't, you will end up with a huge amount of a color you don't want. So you always start with your lightest color first. And since I have these 3 colors here, I can move that out of the way because it's confusing. And move that out of the way. I have these 3 colors. So this is my white that I have left over. Even though I still need to do, actually, looks like it's ready for another layer. Yeah, perfect. You might notice I am not going over the same spot over and over and over again, because if I do that, I'm just going to end up mixing, like I'm going to end up mixing my white into that blue, and then I'll end up smearing it all over the place. Okay, so that was it. See? Layer number 2. Oh, I need to write that on my glaze plan. And usually I just do a little mark for each layer. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, there's two little marks right there. So I've got 2 layers of the white. All right, I'm gonna make myself some light green, and sometimes I like to use the back of the brush. So I'm gonna grab some yellow, put it in, just try to grab a little bit and just see how it looks. Everything that you mix, all the glazes will always be darker when it's fired, just a little darker. So that's still very white. I'm gonna grab a little more yellow, throw it in there. I have no idea what this is gonna look like. So even though I have a lot of experience mixing colors. Normally we would fire what's called a test tile to see what it looks like before we glaze a really important piece in a weird color that we're not used to. Okay, so, all right, so I've got that. Now I need to clean my brush off, or sometimes I just grab the other brush and I'll use the other brush. But I'm gonna wipe it on my sponge just to make sure it's clean. Nope, still dirty. That's better. All right, now I'm gonna grab my darker color because I'm making a light blue-green. There's my, looking for my glaze plan. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of this. I'm gonna put it on the side. Oop. Oh, I have a little bristle coming out because these are cheap brushes. Okay. If you end up with bristles in the glazing, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix this in. You can see it's starting to change color. How do I know how much to add? I don't know. I just start adding a little bit and then add a little bit more. It's really, if you add too much in the beginning, it's really hard to back up and add less. Like actually, I think I put maybe a little too much blue in there. So I'm gonna pull that aside, put it over here out of the way. Throw the rest of that in there. Get it all mixed in. Now I really need enough for 3 layers of glaze. So I don't know if I have enough for 3 layers of glaze. I guess I'm gonna find out. Because if you have to mix it again, it's probably not gonna match. All right, okay, so now I'm gonna go over here and start adding my, I actually think this is gonna be, hey, what are you doing over there? It's my dog, he's making a lot of noise. It's probably gonna be more of a minty green, I think. Okay, and then as I go over these areas, look at this. I might end up getting a little bit, see, boop, right there. It kind of filled it a little bit. I might end up getting some glaze into the grooves. I don't know. There are ways to avoid getting glaze in there. It's just you guys don't have access to those materials right now. I'm gonna go all the way around. See, it looks like I just mixed enough for maybe 2 layers of glaze. I don't want to leave any raw clay showing. It's really hard to tell sometimes. And then I'm going to do a different color on the side, I think. I should put that on my glaze plan. All right. And then cleaning my brush again. I clean it really good because I think I can add this last layer of white. Having a paper towel too to brush off your brush is really helpful. Oh, I don't have my cup anymore. So just making a lot of noise and scaring dogs. Okay, so here we go. This is my last layer of white. Yay! Okay. Woohoo! Okay, I made a little blobby right there. Whoopsie. That will show up. That's not going to disappear. I don't know if you can see it, but it dripped into there. So, all right, I'm going to do a couple more things and then, you know, I keep adding to this video, but I'm just thinking about it as we're going along. So since you gotta be careful handling it too. I just got some glaze on my hand. Since I kind of went in accidentally, oops, look at that little blob. You know, I might just, I want to get it out of there. I don't like it. So I can't get it all completely out of there, but I can take a brush, preferably a small brush. If you have makeup liner brushes, those are great. Obviously, if you start using it for glazing, you don't want to use it for your eyes. That would be not very smart. So I'm going to put some water on the end of my brush. My brush is clean. And I want to make sure there's still a little water on there, but I want to run my brush over it. Grab the sponge. Let's see if I have a clean spot. I'm actually pulling that glaze out of there. Will it still show up? Maybe a little bit, but look, it's gone. It's gone. I'm going to actually grab a little bit of that blue and put some blue over that area. Okay. Now this is an eye, so maybe I also want to do a little highlight. Put a couple little white dots in there. Okay. And because this glaze doesn't really move very much, I can do all kinds of interesting things. My white is still a little wet, so I'm going to grab a little bit of blue. And I can do this with a thin brush. I would actually rather use the liner, but I want to show you what we are using. I'm going to put some weird, scary veins in here. Look at that. So I can draw right on top of it. You might end up having to clean your brush every time because I'm going over some white painted areas. You can see that. That one turned out really light. I'll go back over in a second. But like blue bloodshot eyes. from staying up all night playing, what is that game? Cyberpunk? Yeah. All right, starting to get a little more interesting to me. So I will often do this, add little details after I put down my layers of glaze, because I like patterns and designs, and I like layers of color. Okay, and this is just the beginning. I'm going to add a lot more to this, and I still need to do the sides. So before I start putting my stuff away, though, I need to write down what I did. So I got all 3 layers. I did, oh, I didn't put yellow in the eye, but that's okay. I did 1 layer of the light blue green. And so, and I usually check mark when I feel like I'm finished. Okay. So now I know when I come back to it later that I still have to do 2 layers of the light blue green, which probably means I'm gonna have to mix some more. So I'm gonna cover up my glazes right now because I wrote the names on them. I know what's what. I've got blue here, my blue one. Blue. And then this is the white. See, I didn't put white on here, but it's the only one I've left. So I think it's the white. See, even teachers make mistakes with it. And then, actually it's not. See? That's right. This is a different color that I used in a different demo. Okay. All right, and then I wish I forgot to bring a lid for this. So yeah, this is going to dry out, but I can just hydrate it by adding a couple drops of water and seeing if that's enough tomorrow. So that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just I don't want to keep this around any animals or babies or anybody who's going to eat it. Like, okay, so look at this glaze. This glaze is drying out. This is what happens. This is from earlier today. This is what I have left of black after doing lots and lots of demos. So I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to use clean water. Oh, cleanish. I spray water everywhere. I'm going to drip a couple of drops in there. I mean, there's not much in here, so I don't want to do too much. And I'm going to stir that around, stir it around. And now, once I have it all stirred in, not just a little bit stirred in, but all stirred in, I can reevaluate and decide if I need to add more glaze. But look, it looks perfect. Okay. All right, that's it, guys. Happy glazing.